Good evening. Tonight's topic is more like a recap of what we had going on in the Ukraine and in that war over there. And the topics I think I would like to bring up, which have come to mind, is the prisoner of war POW situation. I have been following some channels on YouTube where the Ukrainians interview the Russian POWs, and what came out of that, to a certain extent, quite a surprise. And then the other thing is a general, short assessment here of where we are in the battle. And then the kind of some ideas of what the future may look like in this. And then, we take it from there. The first thing I wanted to say is thank you for every viewer, and thank you for liking the videos, and thank you for subscribing. I like this. So if you like the videos, like it, please. And if you like to subscribe, please subscribe. That is appreciated. Thank you very much. I usually say it in the end of the video. Some viewers may not watch the entire video. So I wanted to point this out. The other thing is, what I found out is, on the last video I made, the closed captioning did not come on. And the reason for this was I was subscribed as a Prime or the premium YouTube thing, and I canceled it. I had that subscription for months shortly before I started the videos, and I didn't realize this. When you subscribe to premium, the video is going to have automatic caption, and they also published a transcript of that closed captioning, which you can then read underneath the where the description box is, and when you click on it. So these videos may not have closed caption now, and they may not have the transcription of it, and also the uploading is a lot slower when you're non-premium user. I found this interesting because YouTube charges $10 a month for premium, and yet when I publish a video, there's probably going to be advertising on it, and that is the money YouTube makes with it. You as the viewer basically have to sit through that for whatever length, and I don't get paid from it because it goes all to YouTube. So if I pay premium and you have to watch advertisement, that means YouTube is really making money from both sides here, the viewers and the content provider. And you're supposed to be able, at 1,000 viewers or 1,000 subscriptions, to be able to get paid for ad revenue sharing. And I'm looking at this and I say, well, are they going to give you better upload times than 2, and you don't have to subscribe to premium anymore? Or am I going to be making $10 with ad revenue per month, and then I have to pay YouTube $10 for the premium service to be able to upload this faster and get the subscriptions, the closed captioning, the transcript in there? I don't know. I just wanted to throw that in if you were wondering. There's one correction I wanted to make real quick before we start. In the other video, the last one before this here I posted, I shared with you about my granduncle and his coffee plantation and how he rented out the palace in Berlin to the Weimar Republic. After I got done with the video, I think I said in the video 1930 he did it, but it was actually earlier. I think he started it in 1926, 28, in that range. And the reason was because the coffee plantation actually had suffered earlier. Like I said, as the coffee beans were traded in US dollars, the plantations were now under British crown, basically, so to speak. It was I guess in the 1920s, it wasn't really a colony anymore, but it was British, under British government. And so for the currency there was the pound sterling. So the people had been getting paid in gold mark from the German Empire until 1918, and then that was shifted over to pound sterling. So in the trade, he would sell the coffee to the German coffee importers in Hamburg and Bremen, probably, in US dollars. And when the hyperinflation started, this whole scenario and the fallout from this, the coffee got very expensive. So the share of the produced coffee beans in Germany plummeted downward, and that had to do with a loss of revenue. And he was not able to sell his coffee to America or the United Kingdom at that point as much as he wanted to, because his biggest market, established market, was Germany, really, at this point. So this is how this kind of originated. I think the whole turmoil started 1924, and then by 1926, 27, it had gotten really bad in the aftermath from this, even though the hyperinflation kind of calmed down, and that's when that deal was made with the taxes with the Weimar Republic already, and they're renting that castle in Berlin as a guest house. That was how that was done for dignitaries who would visit the Weimar Republic. They were accommodated there. Just for correctness, there's so many things that I can't remember all the details, exactly. I would have to go back and look it up too. It is just too many things. But I thought I'm going to get that sorted out and get that corrected for you. Now, with today's events, is the Ukraine is sort of, the battle is going on, and it is kind of we're waiting for the offensive from the Russians, which hasn't happened yet over there in the east. And so it is kind of sort of a miniature trench warfare, what we got. There's no real movement. No one has really taken any particular part back or not since the last offensive to clear out the Russians out of the northeastern part there or northwestern part of Kiev. And so that's kind of, I guess the Ukrainians are waiting for the armored vehicle for the heavy equipment to roll in. I understand that the Polish T-72, so T-74, T-70, I get these numbers also mixed up. I think they're T-74s and T-82s or something like this. Well, the Russian tanks they had from Poland, from the Polish army out of the Soviet days, they went there, and that was 200 of them, and they have arrived on the battlefield there. Otherwise, the Russians have been just shelling around. Now, I wanted to say one more thing about this Nazi thing, with this whole thing, what the Russians use, primarily with the Ukrainians, to have a justification for this. We have to go back now to 1938, and Hitler and Stalin, through their foreign ministers, which was Ribbentrop and Molotov, they made an agreement of that they were. It was announced that they would not attack each other. Non-aggression, or whatever they called that agreement. In that agreement, which was not public knowledge, both sides had agreed on to dissect Poland in the resulting war. It was summer of 1939 when this was done. And that was really the beginning of World War II. So the Russians, or the Soviet Union, and Stalin was okay with making a deal with Hitler in Nazi Germany. So when it came to this then, because Germany invaded Poland on September 1st, and 16 days later, on September 17th, the Soviet Union invaded the other part, which they had agreed with Germany on how they would dissect Poland in 2 weeks' time, basically. So they were really buddies. This was you look at this, Nazis must have been great at that point. Now Hitler must have been a great guy. Let's go after Poland and just take whatever you want out of Poland. What are they going to do about it, They got Germany coming from one side of them and then the Russians from the other side, the Soviet Union at this point. So Nazi Germany was good. Hitler was good. Everything was good. The Soviet Union was in Poland. Now, when Hitler then went with Operation Barbarossa and that started, then obviously Hitler and Nazi was not good. So this makes you think now they basically turned and twisted this around already back then, however they needed it. And so that's why this whole thing with these Nazis is completely overrated. If you have this, like I said before, is they're going to have some right-wing people over there. There's going to be some people in the Ukraine, like in other countries, in Germany and everywhere else in the United States, we got them too. They're going to be Nazi sympathizers. There's no question about it. You're going to have that everywhere. It is like I said with the auctions. You see this. There's some fascination out there. One with people in the, they seem to be interested in this stuff, and I personally don't think it is good. But I would start a war over this because you have 1% to 2% of the population, maybe 3% in some countries, go apeshit with this stuff, as long as we're not going to wind up with another Holocaust and this, that, and the other thing. Now, I do not endorse the Nazi ideology or anything with it. It is just a fact, a question on how these people could be educated that this is not a good thing. That is up to the politicians and the scholars to decide on how this is done. But for the Russia today to use this as an excuse with the Nazis, here they were in bed with Adolf Hitler to attack Poland collectively in a secretive way, the way it was done, because it was part of the negotiations in Lithuania and Estonia and Letland. All these three countries were dissected in there. There were other parts in there which they had secretly agreed to between Nazi Germany and the Soviet Union in the summer of 1939 on how they would get that sorted out and who would take possession of what. So this is why this whole thing is so strange in the first place. And what can I tell you? This is just if it wasn't as bad as it is, you could say it's a joke. But that's basically where it is at. Now, this goes back to the next chapter here with the prisoner of wars. I will post a link to a channel where a Ukrainian journalist interviews these prisoners of wars, primarily the ones which have been injured in battle, were left behind by their Russian comrades, and were picked up by the Ukrainian Army, which then also supplied the first aid and the medical care these people needed, which ranged from amputation to all sorts of fractures and bullet wounds and this, that, and the other thing. So they are currently, from what I understand, imprisoned in regular prisons because it is just easier to provide the medical care in a kind of a more controlled environment rather than having a field prisoner of war camp out there in the boonies somewhere and, in tents and heat and everything else. So the hygiene and the sanitary conditions and everything else is going to be more conducive. And that journalist, he videotapes these things, and he also asks them while they're videotaping it if the prisoner would like to contact the family in Russia, which most of them agreed to. And the most interesting prisoner, as far as I'm concerned, he had interviewed was a police officer. He is from Siberia, and they had been told, as a reservist of the Russian Federation, to come to a maneuver in Belarus. That was before this whole thing ever started. So they had been there, said they're going to be 2 to 3 weeks in maneuver. And so he had packed up in Siberia. I forgot now what city he's in. He is a police officer. He is a criminal investigator. He does, murders and stuff like this, normal criminal activity. And he was sent there, and then they were told there that they're going to exercise, civil unrest and that sort of stuff. And they had basically riot police there from other parts of the Russian Federation, besides army, regular military. These people are not military. And so they were then, when that big column started to move in the beginning, we remember that 30-mile, 50-mile long column, they were in these columns in these vehicles, and they got attacked. So he got shot. He had a shrapnel wound in his upper thigh, the size of a fist, and he was already in his 40s. So this wasn't a young guy, and he said he had no clue that they were going into war. He had no clue that they would be going into different territory. He's with a regular police force. This is not a military police or a police, associated with armed forces, which you have, which go into combat with the soldiers, with the fighting units to provide then the necessary order and control among the civilian population once the army has, the whole area has been either liberated or taken under, control, whatever the case might be. So they have special trained military police for this stuff to keep everything calm, so that everything can get started to get reestablished one way or the other, depending on what the results is after the war or while the war is going on. And of course, as a criminal police officer, as a investigator, basically you have no education in this. And like I said, so the idea of Moscow was that these troops would move in, and they were basically the troop which moved through the northeast part there into, or they were trying to get into Kiev. And they got shut down on a bridge, going into Kiev. He got out of the bus or the vehicle they were using, and he laid down because they had come under fire from the Ukrainians. And then he went and he got up, and then he got shot. That's when the shrapnel hit him in his thigh, in his upper thigh, and he fell down. And then him and his comrades, they went underneath the bridge, and then his comrades left there. They made the run for it because none of them were soldiers. He said none of them had any weapons. They had nothing there. They were told they would go in, they would demilitarize or denazify the people there, the Ukrainians. That was what they were doing, and they were supposed to be establishing order and control as soon as the government had been replaced. That was the marching order he got, like 8 hours before the whole convoy left. They had no clue of what was going to transpire until the 24th or the 26th of February. So this guy was completely bamboozled because he had no formal training. He is outside his territory, his jurisdiction. Any police officer can tell you this, that a police force only has a jurisdiction. And they usually don't do anything outside of the jurisdiction, especially in another country, getting into another state if they have another police force, or so that, there could be some assistance and that stuff. And he told the reporter too, he had never been deployed anywhere as a police officer outside Russia before in his entire career. And like I said, he's 40 or 45 years old. I will put that link in there. And so this shows you on how disorganized and delusional the entire planning from whoever was involved, the military side, and then from the Kremlin, whoever dreamed this thing up, was completely out of touch with anything. And that is really what we're seeing. This is one of the most disorganized military or combat units or combat force I've ever seen in any war. You can't get any worse than this. There's no question about it. If you bring riot police with platoons with you, and the Ukrainian army is stationed there with heavy weapons and javelins and all of this stuff, and AK-47s, I do not know who slept through this thing, but this is what we're seeing. And you see the same thing with the young people, the conscripts, and the guys who signed up, say, like for 2 years, they sign a contract, to be in the military for 2 years. They were thrown into this mix too. These are all the, people who were born 2001 to 2002, in that range. So you have a whole bunch of them. They had no clue that they were going into battle. That they basically had just finished the basic training and they were told to go into maneuver. And this is the kind of people they came down there with nothing, no specialized forces, nothing, and they're running into a well-organized, well-structured, well-disciplined army. The Ukrainians have done an excellent job, from what I can see and what I have been watching. The moral is high. They're very, very disciplined people, and you can see this the way they're operating, and the losses are fairly low. As better trained a soldier is less likely he's going to get injured or killed, even in dangerous mission when everything starts to hum and bum around you. So this is definitely true. The equipment could be better, and of course the heavy, artillery and armament stuff, that is being worked on, but they have done a tremendous job, and the strategy they have employed is applaudable, with their rapid response teams, the way they put them together on regular SUVs and that sort of stuff. That is a force to be reckoned with. I can tell you this. These are brave people. These are brave soldiers, and they gave them Russians on the run for the money. There's no question about it. But it shows you, so the entire military operation was planned from the get-go completely wrong. They came with riot police out of Siberia with platoons to get into Kiev to beat down protests from the Ukrainian people, which they expected. They really thought that they would go in, take Zelensky and his government out, and the military would just drop dead, and anyone who would protest, they would basically just give them a good beating and then put them in some jail or gulag for a while, and then they would have established order, and they brought the criminal police with them so they could take a look at the whatever crimes or whatever, to get people indicted and that sort of stuff. This is clear now with the people they have basically as prisoners of war. And this explains also these huge losses. The other prisoner, he basically shared the story, is that the Russian army gave them a lot of alcohol, especially the young people, and they gave them opiates, narcotics, which are usually used as painkiller for first aid treatment in the battlefield. And they basically had them shoot this stuff up before they went into battle. So by the time they get to the battlefield, they're completely bummed out of their mind, high as a kite, and they're basically just like zombies walking into the bullets from the Ukrainians. It's like a kamikaze mission. So this shows you on how terrible the Russian military actually functions. And now they went back to the old strategy where they put that firewall up with the artillery, and then the soldiers going behind it. And of course, the one sniper said it, Ukrainian sniper, he said it, they're shooting these Russians down like they're rabbits, that's a rabbit hunting thing. There's another Ukrainian officer I follow on YouTube. Now, of course, I forgot his name. He says Operator Starsky. I think that's his name. Please forgive me if I mispronounce it. I will post that link down there too so you can see it. He does it in English. He was a sergeant in the army, but they promoted him now to be a press officer, and he has a YouTube channel, and he shares a lot of this stuff too. So those are interesting things. So you can, make yourself hear what these people have to say, and that sort of stuff when I'm with these links. So knowing all of this stuff now, the big question comes is more or less at a trench warfare at the time, at this point here. Nothing really moves in either direction. You have some long-range bombing there with missiles and that stuff. The Russians are doing a lot of artillery fire into houses and homes to complicate the restructuring of it, that this cannot go back very quickly to what it was before. When it is over, that is clear too. So the civil infrastructure is getting destroyed in this. But otherwise, there is no real offensive at this point from either side. I guess the Ukrainians, like I said before, are waiting for heavy vehicles, and they will have to launch a counterattack, offensive at one point or another. The operator Starsky, I think that's what it is, he said that they also were thinking, as the Ukrainian army, that they want to retake Crimea. And so they have big plans, and that is basically the end game here on the Ukrainian side, is to throw all the Russian soldiers and probably everything else what is Russian at this point is probably going to be gone and shipped over to the, to Russia. So then the Russians cannot come back and say we have Russian nationals there. I'm pretty sure that they're going to clear the Russian nationals out of any part of the Ukraine, including Crimea. They're going to be relocated. They're going to tell them to leave, basically. The same way the Red Army told the Prussian people to leave Königsberg and East Prussia at that time. That's when they were coming, they were leaving then anyway because they knew better. So this is kind of the end game here. Looking at this, I would say that the Kremlin at this point is probably still in shock. Because if you misplan or miscalculate a war from the beginning in so wrong, then the chances of any kind of success is very limited. And I don't know if they really would have started this war if they would have known the reality of what they were up against in the Ukraine. So I guess in time, history, maybe in a few years, in a decade, in 2 decades, or maybe later when the internal Kremlin papers and archives are going to be open, declassified one day, our children, grandchildren will know why that went that way, the way it has gone. Adolf Hitler was not the most brilliant warrior. He listened to his generals, to the high command, and they had good plans. They were equipped, they were well trained, they could conduct the blitzkrieg and everything else. It wasn't until the thing started to stall that the errors were made in the decision-making process. Stalingrad was one of them. That was Hitler's idea. They should have went for Moscow, and it would have went in a different direction. The other thing was the development of two fronts at the same time. This is something you're trying to avoid as much as you can. Anyway, we will see which way this is going to go. I can tell you one thing. It is for the Russian High Command and Putin or his government. This is going to be a very, very difficult thing to get out of. But if you start a war with that misinformation or that miscalculation, that you're going in there with riot police because you think you're going to drive straight into Kiev, and you basically just take Zelensky out, and that's going to be it. Basically, you have a few bullets flying, and that's going to be the end of it. That is, I don't know. I don't know what they were drinking. I don't know what medication they were taking there in the Kremlin. You just don't have any idea, and I cannot imagine that an entire high command has no clue after being in the Donbass region over there for 14 to 22, 7 years fighting there, that they didn't know that the Ukrainian army can fight like this. That they had access to weapons and ammunition and everything else. So something in there got completely screwed up. And this is at the high command level. So if you're thinking about this, intellectually, from the Russian side, I do not think there's going to be a lot coming. There's not going to be any brilliant warfare strategy coming out of this. This is going to, no. This is so far down and out that you're going to have tears in your eyes just looking at this. I don't know. It's just, I was just absolutely baffled by this, what these people, the Russian officers were telling them. The Russian prisoners of war. And I believe this to be true because this is exactly what we had witnessed. A armed forces of 200,000 men with virtually no strategy other than going in and dealing with the civil unrest. That was sort of the scenario what they had envisioned. Where you go into a soccer stadium and you have to deal with hooligans. That's about the same level. That's kind of what they had envisioned on a little bit larger scale. But this was basically what they thought this is going to be. And you're not going to win a war with this. The soldiers are not motivated to fight in this because they have never been really told what they really had to do. I do not know if the Kremlin is going to declare war on the Ukraine officially or not. It's hard to tell. We will have to wait and see here. I will check in with you. But this is pretty much a very sobering assessment of this is what it is really going on. And like I said again, with this Nazi stuff, just remember, Hitler and Stalin, they were best buddies there for a while. From the summer of 1939 until the Operation Barbarossa started. Was it now in 1940 or 41? Can't remember. I think it was 41. And so a lot of this, they must have had some commonality, because otherwise Stalin would have never agreed if he disliked Nazis that much. To begin with, he wouldn't have made a pact with Adolf. Yeah, and with that, thank you again for watching. And I'm thanking you already if you do like the video, and if you would like to subscribe, please do so. I appreciate it. And I will check back in here depending on what is developing out there on the battlefield in general. And with that, you have a great evening.